Welcome. Welcome. I cannot tell you how great it is to see y'all in this room. Thank you so much for being here and celebrating with us today. Since 1987, ADL Southwest has valued the opportunity to annually honor a member of Houston's bar who exhibits the character embedded in the Karen H. Sussman Jurisprudence Award. These characteristics include a commitment to the law, commitment to principles of inclusion and equity, and an exhibited willingness to fight for those in need. As with the 35 previous honorees, Shauna Johnson Clark, whom we honor today, exemplifies these vital characteristics. Thank you for joining us as we pay tribute to Shauna's work. I'm Mark Tobin, Regional Director for ADL Southwest, and as I said, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 2022 luncheon as we pay tribute to our esteemed honoree. Your presence is a testament to our honoree as well as a statement of support for ADL's commitment to combating anti-Semitism and hate, fighting for inclusion and equity, and confronting those intent on ridding our democracy of its guardrails. We welcome Shauna Clark into a group of outstanding leaders whose names appear on the screen and whose actions positively impact the legal and broader community through their commitment to equity and justice. Like those who came before, Shauna inspires us to challenge hate and bigotry and commit to securing a better and inclusive future. Thank you. Without the support of our sponsors who have filled this room and promoted our work, ADL could not succeed in its mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all. We are tremendously grateful. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the ADL staff responsible for putting this event together. Development Director Mary Gentry Roberts and Central Division staff members Jess Rosen and Melissa Bai. Thank you guys so much. I also have the honor of recognizing our many distinguished elected officials and judicial guests whose names also appear on the screen. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a special thank you to our event co-chairs, Michelle Eber and Jeff Wolf, for their time and effort that goes into planning this remarkable event. We appreciate you and your leadership. And thank you to our honorary chairs, Derek and Chalita Ciprian, as well as our luncheon host committee for all your generous support of Shauna and the ADL. Thank you. In 2019, the Southwest region responded to 30 incidents. Incidents include acts of anti-Semitism, bias, discrimination, and racism, which are reported to us. In 2020, we received 63 incidents. And for the entirety of last year, 2021, which, by the way, set records for the number of anti-Semitic incidents, my office handled 74. So far this year, we have already received a total of 126 incidents. A vibrant and committed legal community lies at the heart of our ability to counter this level of hate. Why? Because we understand how preservation of our democratic norms instruct our ability to respond and critically to change the current climate wherein those who harbor hate in their hearts feel comfortable expressing themselves through harassment and violence. We welcome you today as partners in this effort to combat hate and extremism in all its forms. ADL Southwest is part of ADL Central Division. It's my pleasure to introduce our division's Vice President, Cheryl Drazen. Cheryl has thoughtfully led our division with purpose and grace. I'm grateful for all her work and for joining us today from Dallas. However, before Cheryl joins us, please turn your attention to the screens for a brief video. Thank you.
Tonight, a frantic dash to freedom for hostages fleeing a nearly 11-hour standoff at this synagogue in North Texas. The group escaping through a side door with an armed man following them before he disappears back into the building. Flashbangs and gunshots caught on exclusive video from our ABC affiliate WFAA. Moments later, agents rushing inside. The FBI using a special hostage negotiating team out of Quantico, Virginia, to speak with a suspect now identified as a British national, Malik Faisal Ahram.
It's very likely this situation would have ended very badly early on in the day had we not had professional, consistent negotiation with the subject.
The suspect interrupting Shabbat services at Congregation Beth Israel outside of Fort Worth around 10:20 local time Saturday, taking 4 people hostage, including the rabbi, claiming to have explosives in his backpack. Authorities say he demanded the release of convicted terrorist Afia Siddiqui, now serving an 86-year sentence for trying to kill U.S. personnel in Afghanistan. Members watching a live stream of the service on the synagogue's Facebook page, now taken down, listening in fear.
You know, he said he had a bomb. He said he had a gun.
Across the country, law enforcement also stepping up security at Jewish houses of worship. Shortly after 5 p.m., one man set free, but the others remaining inside for over 4 more hours. All 4 hostages making it out alive and unharmed. Investigators saying the suspect died in a shooting incident.
This was an act of terror.
Today, President Biden condemning the standoff, saying this about how Ahram potentially obtained the weapons after arriving in the country from the UK in recent weeks.
I don't have all the facts, nor does the Attorney General, but allegedly the assertion was he got the weapons on the street.
The Anti-Defamation League recording more than 8,000 incidents of extremism or anti-Semitism across the country in the last 2 years.
Anti-Semitism has risen as physical attacks has risen over the last 3 to 4 years, that we need to prepare our community.
Just last August, the Secure Community Network conducting a security and safety training at Beth Israel Synagogue. Tonight, one of the hostages, Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, crediting that training for saving their lives, saying in a statement, "In the last hour of our hostage crisis, the gunman became increasingly belligerent and threatening. Without the instruction we received, we would not have been prepared to act and flee."
The video sets the stage for January 15th, a cold Saturday dotted with snow flurries in the Metroplex. The venue chosen that Saturday was intentional. It was not a movie theater or a pizza parlor or a shopping mall. Violence in those places is horrific. It was a Jewish house of worship on the Sabbath. Violence aimed at a synagogue is anti-Semitism. When I was called to the scene early that Saturday afternoon, the ask was for me to be a bridge between law enforcement, which was being headquartered in the middle school to the east of Congregation Beth Israel, and the community who was gathering at Good Shepherd Catholic community located equidistant to the west of the congregation. ADL's unique role was to be a connector between community and law enforcement in the midst of a crisis that occurred in other places, but never in our own backyard. The faces inside the congregation, the uniformed officers at the local, state, and federal levels, and the elected officials were all people I knew, people with whom I had worked side by side on a variety of projects, both big and small. The scenario becomes incredibly more intimate when the names match faces you know and the individuals involved are contacts in your cell phone. As I drove the 45 minutes from Far North Dallas to Colleyville early Saturday afternoon, my thoughts returned to my employment lawyer roots. I questioned how Rabbi Charlie could have gone to work and been taken hostage. Is it an assumption of risk as a clergy person to lead your congregation in worship? Later that afternoon, when I was speaking with Adina, Rabbi Charlie's wife, I dug for words. For someone who is rarely speechless, I grappled to find a way to express my support to someone whose spouse had been taken hostage for doing his job, for enabling others to exercise their First Amendment right to worship. The law acknowledges that hostile work environments are toxic, they leave employees vulnerable. Has our burden shifted to society to ensure that houses of worship are safe? What the video does not capture accurately is time, something that can be considered a term of art by the legal community. We measure our productivity in time. Our systems rely on time-bound requirements for action and response. Time is a logical structure and often a means to an end. However, the video's succinct story doesn't do justice, figuratively or literally, to the actual measurement. While it's factually correct to describe the 11 hours that the hostages were held in the sanctuary, and the 6 hours it took our nation's most elite critical incident response group to activate at Quantico until they were ready to go in Colleyville, those times are merely measures of minutes that elapsed on that Saturday. They do not accurately reflect the years of relationships that were involved as those events played out. For nearly a decade, I had made the trek to CBI to help families prepare their college-bound students about how to address anti-Semitism on campus, to address separation of church and state issues with K-12 campus administrators, and to engage with the entire community on the rising tide of hate we are experiencing. The relationships built in the Colleyville community mattered. They allowed ADL to connect directly with leaders and address concerns in real time. Last fall, I had to join Rabbi Charlie in the South Lake Carroll ISD Superintendent's office after an administrator suggested that current Texas law could prevent teaching of the Holocaust. In that meeting, ADL explained that the only alternative view to the Holocaust is denial, and that Holocaust denial is anti-Semitism. The length of these meetings can be measured in time, but that is an incomplete story because the ability to make these meetings happen is a reflection of the depth of the relationships created, not the component of the calendar they fill up for a day. Since January, the question that I am most often asked is to crystallize what did I learn on January 15th. I've given various answers depending on the audience, but they all share a common theme, that building bridges to others in our communities matters, that we must put in the time to do the work so that when we need to call on others for support, we are reaching out to friends, not introducing ourselves to acquaintances. Rabbi Citron Walker's congregation was a model of efforts at bridge building and bringing in interfaith partners, from Muslim leaders who worked with the hostage negotiation team to Chabad rabbis who were being comforted by Catholic priests. The multi-faith efforts of that day were inspiring. The human connection was deep and it was palpable. We must redouble this work on the ground in every community, large and small, and that work takes time. What does it look like? It means getting to know each other better, breaking bread together, learning from each other, spending time outside of our own echo chambers and really listening, hearing people's ideas, particularly when they are different from our own. We are better as a country and a society when we listen to our neighbors instead of constantly trying to drown each other out. Education is vitally important. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred, and it has stood the test of time, using the same tropes for centuries. The anti-Semitic notions that have fueled violence against Jews around the world, and most recently in Colleyville, were learned, but they can be unlearned. That is why ADL remains committed to bringing our No Place for Hate and a World of Difference anti-bias education programs into schools across Texas. ADL provides anti-Semitism education at your fingertips with our Words to Action program for the Jewish community and our Binah curriculum for members of the global community. Every one of us can invest the time and help the fight by speaking out against hate and demanding that others do the same. This is difficult because it means speaking up even when it's hard to do. That means when hatred is being expressed by our own friends, our own political party, our colleagues, and our family members. Courage to speak out against hate, regardless of the source, is not easy. It's a personal investment and one that doesn't come without personal risk. That risk, however, must be taken if we're committed to fight hate for good. ADL has been leading the fight against anti-Semitism for more than a century, and in that time, we have learned that there is not one panacea against anti-Semitic hate. It's a battle on all fronts and takes not just a few committed individuals willing to stand up and speak out, but an entire community committed to putting in the time to end hate for good. I want to thank you for your investment of time to be here today. This hour, plus the travel time to and from, is precious. Many in this room have a value to assign that time, literally a billable rate that quantifies your efforts. ADL's efforts on January 15th cannot be counted as the hours on the ground as the situation unfolded. The success of that day rested on the investment made in building bridges between the community, political leaders, and law enforcement that took decades. That work is only possible because of generous donors. Those relationships are able to be cultivated and stewarded because of continued support. So thank you for giving ADL the time that we needed to create those relationships that we called upon in Colleyville, and that we will call upon the next time hate rears its ugly head in one of our communities. ADL could not have responded in Colleyville without the support of our community, the relationships we build with each other, and those who support us. Your presence here today is evidence that you support this amazing honoree and that you share our belief in ADL's mission. Your time is valuable, and I'm asking that you quantify that value and that you consider helping ADL to fight hate by giving today. Your support matters greatly. It's easy. You can just text ADL 22 to 41444. That support guarantees that ADL can continue to fight hate for good. I appreciate your being here today. It's time for lunch.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Eber of Validity Finance, and it is my honor to be one of the co-chairs of today's Karen H. Sussman Jurisprudence Award Luncheon. It's really great to be back in person for what I consider to be one of the finest occasions in our profession. A day when we reflect on an organization fighting anti-Semitism, racism, and prejudice of all kinds, and on an attorney from our community who defines the mission of the ADL: to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. That dual mission is really important. There's a common misconception that ADL is fighting only for the Jewish people. But as you've already heard a little bit about today, ADL fights for justice and fair treatment for all people. If you believe hatred and bigotry have no place in our world, ADL is the place for you. If you believe cyber hate, bullying, and terrorism must be eliminated, ADL is the place for you. And if you believe our democratic norms are under threat, ADL is the place for you. As I think of what kind of world I want for my own children to grow up in, no organization's work is more important than ADL's. As Cheryl Drazen so beautifully illustrated, ADL's work is critical, and it requires all of our support. Please consider joining me in the fight against hate by texting to give to ADL Southwest. Just text ADL 22 to 41444. Now, turning to the most important reason we are all here today. None of ADL's work could be possible without the support and commitment of lawyers like Shauna Clark. Today, we are thrilled to award Shauna Clark with the Karen H. Sussman Jurisprudence Award. Shauna shares wholeheartedly in ADL's drive to fight all forms of hatred and bigotry. Her work and her advocacy in these areas are tireless. Please turn your attention to the video screens where we will learn a little bit more about Shauna, her work, and why she is so very deserving of this award. Thank you.
People take note when Shauna is on the scene, and people are keenly aware of all the good that Shauna has done in the community by leading by example.
Shauna is a loving mother. She's tough and demanding on the kids, but she's also the one that they run to lean on.
One of the things I learned from Shauna, find your own voice, be authentic, speak from the heart, be who you are. And I think that's also one of the messages of the ADL.
I think it's important for the ADL to continue to highlight champions of justice. I think about the famous quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere."
Equality, justice, fairness, and a sense of social service and commitment are qualities that Shauna personifies. Shauna lives every day.
I think Shauna deserves this award for a variety of reasons. You're going to hear a bunch, I'm sure, from people that can attest to her from the legal side. She is a stellar attorney, best at what she does, not only in Houston, but throughout the country, and I dare say the world. She's got the ear and earned the trust of people at the highest levels, the C-suite and the board. And so she gets to play a real huge role in that context.
What I see in this award for Shauna and why she is so deserving is Shauna makes a difference both at the macro level and the day-to-day interactions that all people have. So on the macro level, she's brought awareness of heart disease to African American communities in connection with the Heart Association. She's championed racial justice. She's started programs around diversification and inclusion and speaks on those matters. She lives that mission on a macro level. But on a micro level, which is sometimes omitted, she recognizes and connects to every person. She has a commitment that no person will be invisible, no person will be marginalized. She greets people with grace and respect. And that day-to-day makes a big difference in all of our lives. And I think that is fundamental to why she's such a role model to me and why she's such a good representative of the ADL. And I love that the mission is expanded all around the no place for hate and all the aspects of discrimination, racial justice, violence, bullying, etc. Recognizing someone like Shauna elevates that cause and provides all of us with a role model for someone who has truly lived that mission. And I hope we'll continue to honor members of the community who come forward and really make a difference on the lives of others around them.
Shauna is deeply committed to the mission of ADL, fighting hatred and bigotry in all of its forms, whether it is anti-Semitism or racism or anti-Asian sentiment. Every form of bigotry and discrimination is absolutely abhorrent to Shauna. I knew that Shauna was leading the fight against racism and the race against racism, and of course pledged to support her.
One of the things that Shauna and I have always been standing in agreement upon is the notion of being involved in our community and giving back. Even though her professional life and her personal life are separate and distinct, in this situation, it's easy to remain intertwined because it's at the core of who she is.
I teasingly told Shauna one time, I said, it's not easy to live up to your expectations. And she said, it's not easy to live up to yours. But then I realized actually what's so beautiful about Shauna is she doesn't have expectations. She has hope and she has grace. And I was looking at Romans, one of the chapters in the Bible, and have this quote for you, Shauna. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay evil with evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. It is possible, as far as it depends on you, to live at peace with everyone. And that kind of summarizes what I think are some of Shauna's greatest strengths. Humility, meeting people where they are, and building a peaceful connection among all types of people.
ADL could not have selected a more worthy or better honoree for this award. Shauna lives and breathes the principles of ADL, the values of Karen Sussman, and the values of the Karen Sussman Jurisprudence Award, and I have seen that do her every day for the almost 30 years that I have known her. Congratulations, Shauna, on receiving this wonderful and well-deserved award.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Wolf, and I am honored to serve as one of the co-chairs of this year's event. Co-chairing this particular jurisprudential luncheon has a special significance for me because I've had the privilege of being one of Shauna's law partners at Norton Rose Fulbright for the last 20 years. Since I've known Shauna, I've had the opportunity to see firsthand her dedication to the community, the contribution she makes to our law firm, our profession, the example that she sets for others, and the respect that she holds with her colleagues here in Houston, nationally, and even globally. Because you see, Shauna served as our firm's global chair for our 50 offices around the world. She was the first woman of color to hold that position in our firm, and she held the distinction of being the only woman of color to be the chair of an AmLaw 200 firm. Now, this is not her first experience with ADL. Last year, she led our law firm's global charitable initiative, which raised the awareness and the importance of fighting racism and promoting social justice. The primary event of this initiative was the Run Against Racism, which raised a large sum of money for the ADL Southwest region. So, as ADL chose this year's recipient, our law firm knew that Shauna was a wonderful choice. And as she always does with the numerous causes with which she is involved, she's helped to make this one a successful one for ADL. So on behalf of all of my colleagues at Norton Rose Fulbright, I express our congratulations to our good friend, our colleague, on her recipient of this well-deserved award. Shauna, would you please join me on stage? Shauna Clark, it is my privilege to present you with the 2022 Karen H. Sussman Jurisprudence Award.
Thank you, Jeff. I have to admit that I'm a bit overwhelmed by this recognition from ADL. I've attended this event and supported ADL since Linda Addison introduced me to its work almost 20 years ago. And I've always been inspired by the past honorees, but it never once crossed my mind that I would be standing before you. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't suffer from low self-esteem, as many of my friends will tell you. I'm not one for false modesty, and I don't suffer imposter syndrome. In fact, Rachel, this was very timely. Every morning during my Bible time, I have to remind myself not to think more highly of myself than I ought. I am a trial lawyer, after all. And even though I'm a woman of many firsts, first homegrown Black woman to become a partner at Fulbright Jaworski, to be named head of a Houston office, head of the U.S. Employment and Labor Group, and global and U.S. chair, I find it difficult to identify with that woman. I identify with the women, with the people in the margins. I never expected this recognition because I spent a large portion of my life in the margins. I grew up a poor, dark-skinned girl of a single parent in Louisiana. My mom raised us on her own because our father didn't want us. My mother worked hard every day for my brother and me. She ran a daycare from our house, and as hard as she worked, caring for the children in my town, it was never enough for us to live above the poverty line. Nevertheless, she was always very proud of her work, and she instilled in me this work ethic to do everything, no matter how large or small, as unto God. So like my mother, I learned to work hard serving in the margins, unseen, unheard, invisible. I've spent well over half my life in the margins, and I'm very comfortable working behind the scenes, supporting others, encouraging others, inspiring others. To be honest, I thought I was called to be the woman behind the man and the woman behind the woman. Now, my best friend Stacey Maris will scoff when she hears this, but I don't enjoy the limelight and I don't seek it, and all of this attention causes me anxiety. I heard often that girls are seen and not heard, and I found nothing wrong with that sentiment. I didn't have a voice, I had nothing to say, and I had no one to listen. Unseen, unheard, invisible. In college, one of my many part-time jobs was a custodian at a refinery, and my friends know I learned a lot about myself and others cleaning the men's restroom in a refinery in South Louisiana in the 80s. I went to that job and I was invisible. No one noticed me, no one spoke to me. I was in the margins, someone there to do the jobs no one else wanted to do. And yet I took so much pride in my work, cleaning toilets in the margins. And as a new attorney at my law firm, I worked hard and had the support of the gruff labor partners who I worked for. But this is not to say I didn't encounter times in the margins, even as an attorney at a large white shoe law firm. In 1996, as a second-year lawyer, I was given the responsibility of handling an entire OFCCP race discrimination audit alone at a company in Geismar, Louisiana. I remember both the partner and I thought the project was a gem for me because Geismar is only 15 or so miles south of Plaquemine, Louisiana, my hometown. At the first break in our day of interviews, the plant manager and the vice president of human resources, a lovely woman I assumed was well-versed in appropriate conduct, invited me to lunch to discuss my initial thoughts about the investigation. I recall another executive joined us. We traveled in one car to what appeared to be a cabin. As it turns out, that's the name of this restaurant, The Cabin. The Cabin is a converted slave quarter that supposedly had been lovingly preserved for its historical significance. I was stunned. I had lived my entire life in South Louisiana, and while I was familiar with restored plantation homes and had cleaned quite a few, but I had no idea that such a monstrosity existed. It is difficult to describe my reaction to seeing actual remnants of slaves, chains, collars, tubes. The cooks, waiters, waitresses were all black, and I remember catching the eye of the black hostess as she escorted us to our table, and I felt ashamed. While I remember my lunch, red beans and rice, I cannot recall a single word spoken during lunch. Of course, I didn't eat, imagining people like me being treated like animals. The patrons were all white, and by all appearances, the cabin did well. All tables were full. The lunch ended finally, and we returned to the plant. I shared nothing about the experience. I completed the audit and returned to my mother's house. I said nothing about the experience. I returned to the office the following Monday and gave a full report to my partner. He said, "Shauna, I knew you'd handle it." I said nothing about the cabin. 15 years later, still haunted by that experience, I finally told the partner about the cabin, and he was genuinely shocked, appalled, disappointed because he could not fix it. Couldn't fire the client was long gone. He couldn't escalate my offense. To whom? He could do nothing. And I tell you, to this day, the only justification I have for my silence is my comfort level having grown up in the margins. However, that experience, observing my partner's concern and disappointment that it could not be fixed, and other experiences changed me for the better. I have since found my voice. I now have the courage to speak up and to speak out and to call out discrimination and unfairness when I see it. And ironically, my willingness to do so objectively and without partiality is what my family, my friends, my colleagues, and clients appreciate the most. And so I have found that the margin is no longer the place for me. While I'm comfortable and very effective there, I believe I'm called to be here, up front, with you, voicing the voices of those without voices, helping to amplify the important work of the ADL, to remain vigilant in the fight against anti-Semitism, to fight against racial injustice, to fight against inequality and harassment, to help those who are oppressed, to educate those who may not know better or do and just have not been checked before, and to protect those in the margins who have not yet found their voice. And there is so much work to do. April 28th was Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, a day set aside to remember the 6 million Jews who were massacred by Nazi Germany and its allies. Some communities reported anti-Semitic and racist flyers disrupting events. The ADL reported that in the Southwest region, anti-Semitic incidents have tripled since 2020. So now more than ever, we need to speak up, each of us, to speak up against hate and unfairness. And now more than ever, we need to support the work of the ADL and its mission. And there are many ways to get involved. And I'm proud that last year our firm sponsored its first Run Against Racism to raise both awareness and financial support for the ADL. And now that my time is coming to a close, I want to sincerely thank my beautiful family, our event chairs, my partner Jeff Wolf and Michelle Ebert, thank you so much, as well as Mary Gentry Roberts for their hard work and sacrifice to make this event happen. I want to thank our honorary co-chairs, Derek and Shalita Ciprian, and my Norton Rose Fulbright family, our clients and colleagues and my friends who've supported me in this event. I appreciate you and I'm blessed to have you. And to ADL, thank you again for seeing me, for hearing me, for allowing me this opportunity to be a voice for those who remain in the margins. Thank you.
Shauna, on behalf of the entire ADL Southwest Board, I want to thank you. Thank you for all the work that you are doing and continue to do, and thank you for sharing your story. You honor us by all your inspiring commitment to making this a more inclusive and just world, and you truly are so deserving of this award. Our board chair, Karen Westall, is under the weather and sends her regrets as well as her appreciation to Shauna and all of you in attendance. I know your presence here today has made this a memorable afternoon for Shauna and an inspiration to all of us. Our hope is that each of you leaves here better informed about ADL's work and a commitment to stand with us to fight hate for good. One last reminder for those of you who would like to support ADL in its critical work to secure justice and fair treatment for all, please join me in making a gift to ADL. It's easy and quick. Just text ADL22 to 41444. We could not fight this fight without the generous support from our donors, and we thank you in advance. With a final congratulations and heartfelt thank you to Shauna, this concludes the 2022 ADL Jurisprudence Award Luncheon. We look forward to seeing you here again next year.